covering a vast expanse of 663,268 square miles, or 1,717,856 square kilometers. Alaska stands as the largest state in the United States. It is more than twice the size of the second largest U.S. state, Texas, and larger than the next three largest states, Texas, California, and Montana, combined. Globally, Alaska ranks as the seventh largest subnational division and, if independent, would claim the 18th spot among countries, almost the same size as Iran. To put its scale into perspective, if New York City matched Alaska's population density, Manhattan would host a mere 14 residents. Conversely, if Alaska mirrored NYC's density, an astonishing 41 billion people would inhabit the state, exceeding the current global population by over fivefold. Notably, if Manhattan adopted Alaska's density, it would house just 14 individuals. Despite its immense size, Alaska ranks 48th in population, trailing behind only Wyoming and Vermont. This prompts the question, why does this expansive state remain sparsely populated? Alaska is bitterly cold for most of the year. We're talking about the kind of cold weather where eyelashes freeze together when your eyes water. And they will water, because it can be quite windy. There is a saying that in Alaska, there are only two seasons, winter and winter will be back in minutes. The winters are longer than those in the lower 48, and the snow doesn't really melt off for the entire winter. It's dark for most of it, and temperatures can be quite cold. If you dislike the cold, well, chances are that you'll probably dislike Alaska in the winter. However, in the summer, it's more manageable in most places. In Juneau, the capital located in the southeast portion of the state, the average high temperature in July is 63 degrees. In December, temperatures typically reach a high in the low 20s and sometimes dip below 0 degrees at night. In Fairbanks, the average temperature in July is 73 degrees. In December, it goes from an average high of 0 to an average low of -15. Around the winter solstice in December, Fairbanks often gets a little over 3 hours of sunlight a day, from around 11 a.m. to 2:45 p.m. The lack of sunlight causes many people to experience seasonal affective disorder in Alaska, making them a bit more depressed and cranky in the winter. If you have one of those well-paying jobs, you can afford to join a health club and work out under full spectrum lights, or afford outdoor activities, or afford counseling. However, many cannot. And this brings us to the next reason why Alaska is sparsely populated. Living in Alaska comes with a hefty price tag. Now, this fact might surprise some folks. Everything from groceries to rent to daily essentials comes with a higher cost and isn't always readily available. This can be largely attributed to the expensive shipping. Many places rely on boat or plane deliveries, incurring higher costs compared to truck deliveries. Securing a well-paying job in an urban area makes navigating these challenges easier, but such opportunities are scarce. The cost and time associated with travel make short trips back home a luxury for those who have relocated to Alaska and miss their relatives. Affordable fares out of Anchorage often involve inconvenient flight times between midnight and 5 a.m., coupled with multi-hour layovers. An unintended consequence of these challenges is the frequent turnover, especially in retail. Individuals worn down by the various difficulties mentioned earlier often work for a brief period, accumulating enough money to make them move back down south. Alaska's economy predominantly relies on the extraction of natural resources, employing an extensive approach, particularly in activities like mining, forestry, and fishing in the Gulf or Bering Sea. Oil extraction, although intensive, is dispersed across challenging terrains, often lacking significant concentrations of inhabitants. Most economic endeavors in Alaska are extractive, involving the removal of mineral resources, timber, or fish for utilization elsewhere. Unfortunately, this type of economic activity seldom results in local infrastructure development or economic spin-offs, especially when influential figures can easily reside outside the state, as was the case in the pre-statehood years. Despite significant contributions from military installations in the past, their presence has diminished over time. Tourism, while present, impacts only a relatively small portion of the state in terms of square miles. Despite being a raw material exporter, especially of crude oil, Fuel in Alaska tends to be relatively expensive. Local refineries that once served regional markets have been replaced with imports for reasons not entirely clear. Alaskans overwhelmingly depend on fuel, facing challenges with alternative energy sources due to the impracticality of hydropower north of the Alaska Range in winter, and the difficulties of making solar/wind energy viable. While geothermal energy is used in isolated spots, coal and oil remain primary sources of electricity generation. In very rural areas, not served by roads, but connected to the world via bush planes or riverboat, some villages receive their municipal fuel supplies by barge. The significant fuel budget required to maintain warmth, even with proper installation, adds another layer to the cost of living in these regions. Economically, Alaska is not integrated with Canada due to its status as another country, limiting cross-border travel. The state lacks the population density to achieve economies of scale in transportation, and being primarily non-manufacturing, most goods have to be shipped in. In terms of employment, Alaska has witnessed economic booms and busts, resulting in job scarcity, plummeting housing prices, and business closures during downturns. There has been relatively limited economic activity, development, and infrastructure expansion to draw people into the state, particularly outside the Rail Belt corridor between Anchorage and Fairbanks. The correlation between Alaska's vast land area and its sparse population density can be misleading when considering why more people don't reside here. Alaska boasts over 3 million lakes, with marshlands and wetland permafrost, spanning 188,320 square miles, or 487,700 square kilometers, primarily in the northern, southern, and western flatlands. Glacier ice covers approximately 28,957 square miles, or 75,000 square kilometers of the state. And the Bering Glacier alone is the largest glacier in North America, encompassing 2,008 square miles, or 5,200 square kilometers. That's pretty big. Additionally, 35% of Alaska is cloaked in forests, many designated as protected lands owned by state or federal governments, further limiting inhabitable areas, resulting in fewer roads and railways compared to the lower 48. Moreover, much of Alaska's land area, despite its vastness, is not readily accessible. Substantial portions are plagued by permafrost or varying degrees of seasonal swampiness. The flatlands, often composed of relatively recent glacial till, undergo seasonal churning by active rivers, experiencing freeze/thaw cycles. This terrain, characterized by winter snow and ice, and summer mud and bog, proves challenging for construction. In regions like Soldotna and Kenai, the presence of federally and state-owned land, as well as national park areas, contributes to restricted accessibility due to stringent land regulations. Alaska's geophysical composition leans more towards a vast wilderness than a rural state, with only 2 rural/semi-urban areas. Living in Alaska requires resilience due to its tough environment, making it more than just a temporary working or living destination. Permanent residents and thriving here present unique challenges. Additionally, the difficulty in traveling to and from Alaska serves as a significant barrier to entry. The scarcity of accessible and viable port space in Alaska further complicates matters. Where mountains don't plunge into the sea, ice-bound shores pose challenges. In the southeast and south center, where the coast is mountainous, extensive snowfall from the warm, moist Pacific system makes constructing port facilities relatively expensive. You can't really talk about Alaska without mentioning the animals here. The wildlife encompasses bears, moose, elk, and various other species. Alaska's Department of Fish and Game approximates that the state is currently home to 30,000 grizzlies, or brown bears, and 100,000 black bears. Beyond the bears, the wildlife roster includes wood bison, wolves, ox, wolverines, lynx, and caribou. While the diverse wildlife is a draw for certain individuals, it also entails considerable conservation efforts and the potential for danger. This can impede the widespread settlement of people in the region. A significant deterrent for those considering living in Alaska is the profound sense of isolation. Regular visits to see family become a logistical challenge, as there is only one road out of the state, requiring a multi-day journey through the wilderness to reach more populated areas of Canada. Flying home isn't a readily accessible option unless one possesses a well-paying job. A quick glance at a map reveals Alaska's remote location, characterized by vast wilderness, and, except for a few areas, an enduringly cold climate. Situated outside the mainstream of the rest of North America, moving to Alaska is more like relocating to another country than simply changing states. Beyond the cities of Anchorage, Juneau, and Fairbanks, much of the state is either situated on an island or requires an hour or more drive to reach the nearest city. While some are drawn to Alaska for its isolation, seeking a fresh start or an escape from larger cities, it is essential to recognize the darker side of this allure. Mental health challenges, alcoholism, drug abuse, and domestic violence are prevalent issues, and individuals with pre-existing mental health conditions might mistakenly believe that moving to Alaska will offer an escape, only to find themselves trapped and in worse conditions. Alaska's population exhibits high mobility, with people frequently coming and going, making it challenging to establish and maintain friendships. The reality of isolation is palpable. Even individuals who have resided in Alaska for an extended period occasionally grapple with the sting of isolation. Then there are the demographics. In certain areas, like the Aleutians, there are 180 men for every 100 women. The same is generally true in remote areas where fishing and oil production are the biggest means of employment. Women may think there are lots of good catches in this state, but apparently there is a saying that applies there, which you'll probably understand immediately. The odds are good, but the goods are odd. When you have one gender that is less than ideal marriageable material, it probably affects birth rates and family size. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to be among the first notified when we release our upcoming videos.